This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And if you're planning a trip to Walt Disney World and want a lot of extra space for yourself and want your own private pool, your own full kitchen, lots of great amenities like these can be found at an All-Star Vacation Home. Visit them online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It is Friday, April 24th, 2009, and this is episode 555 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
Well, that alters the homing signal, and that's not good.
Dinosaur?
Dinosaur.
I still have my eyes open for that part.
Ooh.
And also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse Radio. Mike, I'd have a longer introduction, but I really want to get as much time for our guests as we humanly possible, so sorry.
Let's go. Then forget it. Let's go.
And it's my pleasure to welcome our special guest panelist today. He is the director of the films found in many of the beloved attractions around Walt Disney World, such as Cranium Command, Sounds Dangerous, Rock and Roller Coaster, Alien Encounter, Oh Canada, the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular, and my personal favorite, Back to Neverland, and yes, even Dinosaur. I'm proud to welcome director Jerry Reese to the show. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi. Nice to talk to all you guys.
Oh, it's great to have you on, Jerry. Certainly, as I mentioned, you've worked on quite a number of attractions over here, and as I alluded to in the episode's introduction, you directed an absolute favorite of mine. It starred Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite. It's a real favorite of ours. I mean, we all love it. There's some great lines in there. I think you're going to notice that many of the attractions we mentioned, we have no choice but to start mentioning some of the great lines that are in the movie, such as, Captain Hook, First Blood.
Right.
When working on Back to Neverland, tell us what memories you have of directing that film.
Well, gosh, it was interesting for me. It was sort of a surprise that I even got involved with it at the beginning. I had just gotten a call from Mark Kirkland, who was a line producer, and I had gone to school with him at Cal Arts. And he said, there's this project we're doing for Disney, and we just love to get a fresh eye on it. We're not sure that we're keeping the wind in the sails over here, and we just like you to come in and give your 2 cents because you used to be an animator at Disney Feature Animation, and it's about Disney Feature Animation. So, I went in and took a look, and I assumed that I was just going to give my 2 cents, and that would be it. And as I saw what was on display, it was a lot about the technical aspects of animation. So, it's, how many drawings, and if you stack them all up, they would go from to here in the moon and back, and all those kind of statistics. And I just started to get really involved with it, and I said, well, that's kind of what makes Disney the same as everybody else, because all animation has that, but there really is a story of what makes Disney different, and it's about the emotions involved, and that every department inside of Disney is part of the story department, really, because what sort of color you have in the scene talks about the character's mood, and what sort of furniture that might be in the room says something about the character and their state of mind. And so all departments are storytelling departments, and it's all about emotion, and you never just pick things arbitrarily, and it's not about the technical stuff. It's about the emotional stuff. And so anyway, they were interested in the passion, and they said, well, why don't you put some ideas about the story you would tell, since you used to be in that department. So I came in the next morning and just went, well, instead of having technical people talk about technical things, I would bring somebody in who's all about experience, and somebody like Robin Williams, and then put him through the experience of getting to go there, getting to be the kid in the candy store, and go into the world of animation and see how, step by step, as he's taken into this world, all of the steps have to do with emotion and storytelling. And so anyway, they really liked that, and so it was that literally like 24 hours after I'd gotten involved, they were making a call to Disney and going, the stuff we've been working on for the last 9 months, well, maybe all of that's going away and there's something new. And so a couple of the people were like, what? And so anyway, they said, put together a presentation. So rolled up my sleeves and worked with some of the people there, and we put together a presentation and showed it to, I believe Peter Schneider was the first person from Disney to take a look at it. And he said, okay, got a couple weeks in, present it to Katzenberg. So, man, there were a number of us in the little core team that quickly, put something together that gave the message that seemed to resonate with my experience back in the animation department. So we presented to Katzenberg, and he loved it. and it was just total blast to work with Robin.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, Robin is it's interesting you mentioned him because I wanted to know in the attraction. I mean, Robin is obviously as you kind of alluded to, he's quite a force of nature. How much of that how much in that film, how much of what we see there is ad-libbed and how much actually was written down for him? Because it seems to me like he must have just gone crazy when you told him,
Good
okay,
question.
here's the here's the script, and he must have just gone to town with some of the stuff.
Well, it was really interesting because I had to sort of do two models of the film. I had to do the blueprint. Traditionally in Disney animation, we put together a story reel to map out what the film is going to be, and so you put temporary dialogue, temporary sound effects. You cut temporary music to it, and you sort of mock up what you're doing. And so I did that, and I hired a voice person who's just brilliant. Has done a lot of stuff for Disney since then, Corey Burton, and he did a temp voice for Robin and Walter, believe it or not, which we put in the reel and cut the storyboards to it prior to animation getting done. And it was a way that I could show all the team members having to do with animation and live action and the executives back at Disney where things were at any given point. So during that process, I actually had to sort of write in the style of what Robin might say. And obviously, the reason you get Robin is because Robin has his own wonderful mind. So I was put in the position of just trying to be in the ballpark so that the executives watching it could have fun and get what it was going to be. And then the next thing I did was I got the approvals. Then I went up and, well, actually the next thing I did was give Robin and Walter a personal look at the storyboards so they would know what was up. And then I went to record Robin up in the Bay Area. And once the animators started working, then the last thing I did was film him in live action on the set with Walter Cronkite. So when I went up to record Robin, it was funny because that was his first question when he walked in, and he's like, was wondering if he could play a little bit, if he had to just follow the dialogue. And I said, Robin, I just, I had to just get in the ballpark. I'm fully inviting you to play with these things, but you have to set up this particular line for Cronkite, because at the end of this paragraph, you have to set up his next line. So as long as you get there, you can play. And so I started showing him, here's a section where I really want you to play. Here's another section where I want you to play. Here's another section. And pretty soon he was like, oh, well, I don't want to do everything. There's some good writing here. And so he came back and sort of met me halfway and kept some of the stuff in, actually, which I in fact, one of the lines, hi, everybody, I'm a corporate symbol, was actually written, and he kept it all the way to the end. Huh. But a lot of the stuff that you heard, well, like First Blood, was actually improv. But the thing that I just was astounded by was he could, he'd like to sort of grab information and then whip it up in his mental Cuisinart. He'd be like, oh, what are some of the films? What could we refer to? So I'd throw out a bunch of ideas, and he would just like, okay, I'm ready. And then I'd call action, and he would just go nuts with something that I hadn't even anticipated. And then he would get to the setup line for Walter, and I had to hand it to Walter that he was very patient on trying to wait through all the improv to see, like, when is he going to set me up? When's my line coming? But here's what I'm getting at, that he could do that. And after I'd call cut, I could go to Robin and say, oh my gosh, that middle thing you hit was just hilarious. Could you shift that to the end? And he'd say, sure, no problem. And I could just call action again, and he would do the same thing with the same improvisational feel, but swap things around and restructure it right then. And so that idea that he wasn't just, as many people perceived, kind of a loose cannon. He was certainly a fountain of improvisational ideas, but he could shape it, and I was amazed by that.
Absolutely. First of all, before we go any further, I need to mention that you have a great Robin Williams impersonation going on.
I was thinking the same thing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was funny. What a personable guy he was too. Just very friendly to the animators. As I was saying, the first thing I did was record his voice, then started the animators at work, and then filmed him in live action. So by the time we were shooting on the set, I was able to invite the animators to visit him on the set and flip some of the animation scenes that they were doing. So he got to see himself sort of coming to life as the cartoon character.
Cool.
And so I just set them up. I had to move to another stage, so I just introduced them to each other and walked away and let them have their time together while I set up the next thing. And he came over after that. He spent probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes with them. And he came over and he had tears in his eyes. And he just said, "Oh man, I was really flattened. They're so talented, you know." And he just was so touched. And he just said they're so special and they have such skill and everything. And it just, I thought it was a wonderful statement about him that he didn't just see that as a, I got to deal with these people as a little, goodwill gesture or whatever.
Absolutely.
But he really paid attention, and he was really impressed, and he was moved by it. And, it just says a lot about who he is. He's great.
Oh yeah. I mean, trust me, I would love to spend the next hour with you talking just about that attraction. But you know what? You've worked on so many other attractions at Walt Disney World here, and we definitely want to try to talk about as many as we can. I mean, the one that really comes to mind was Cranium Command, and I think I know that many of us felt that this was one of the most underrated attractions at Walt Disney World. And just like Back to Neverland, this had some great lines in it also. I think I still use some of them, to my father. I was like, "If I was 50 years old, I'd be attacking you now." In the attraction, there are a number of screens, and for those who don't recall, each screen represented a body sense. The stomach, the heart, and so forth. And talk to us a little bit about the challenges of directing this attraction and what you remember from it.
It was really interesting. It was super complex. I mean, hopefully when the audience comes in, it's just being immersed in a wonderful experience, and you don't think about the complexity or the technical aspect of what went into it. But behind the scenes, it was extremely complex and interesting to deal with. And the first thing I did was went out with the director of photography and worked out concepts of how we would do the point of view through the eye screens. There were two screens in the shape of eyes, and the conceit was you were looking out through this kid's eyes. So I took just home video camera and went out to different locations with the DP and his camera operator, and we would try things that just to see how it might work in the project. And I went through an auditioning project too for the boy that played the main role of whose head you're riding, and when you'd look in the mirror, you'd see this kid. I auditioned a lot of them because it was a very unusual thing, and still just concentrating on the point of view. The fact that without computer effects, just with a bunch of people running around coordinating their actions with each other, you had to get the concept across that you were looking through somebody's eyes, and when they would look down, you would see their own body. When you would look in a mirror, you would see that person looking into the mirror. When you sit down to eat and they bring the fork up with the food, that it comes right to the camera as if you're the person eating. Well, you have to remember there's a camera operator holding a very heavy camera in those days, and then a kid tucked underneath the camera running around trying to put the arms and hands and feet in the right spot at the right time while long shots were going on. We didn't have edit points. Only a few times did we have edit points because the conceit was it's continuously seen through the eyes. So very, very complex choreography that had to happen just amongst the main players just to get the eye point of view accomplished. And fortunately, I found the same boy that had the great instincts for how to move properly and coordinate with us, so it would let us stay on schedule and get the shots we wanted. Also happened to just have a great face and a great voice, so it all wound up, with him just being the perfect person to cast. Now you have the stuff shot through the eyes, and you have to have the other characters who appear on different scenes coordinate with that. So now when I was filming, say, Charles Grodin for Left Brain and John Lovitz for Right Brain, I had to bring that point of view, because they were supposed to be reacting to that point of view, which is continuous. So I would play that on a little monitor, and then I would cue them while I was filming them, while I was watching playback from the iScreens to try to get, and I would cue when certain things were happening that they were supposed to be responding to. So you had to play back one while you were filming another, and then we had to also account for where people were looking when, because we also had animatronic characters in the room with the audience members.
Right.
So they had to be looking at the right point on the screen, to be either looking at the eye point of view or looking at an upper or lower screen having to do with the body characters, the interior body characters. So for that, we mocked up the playback on the eye point of view and a rough edit on the other characters. Filmed that. I brought it home, played it on my TV, and then put a little miniature character of Buzzy, the pilot, on the end of a pencil, and I moved it around and filmed that so it would be a guide for our people doing the animation on the audio animatronic character for where the big boom would swing and where he would be concentrating his attention at any given time. So there was a lot of filming, playing back while you're shooting, and then putting those two elements together and playing back while you're shooting yet another element. And my assistant director, Michael Haney, he came in the evening before we were going to start shooting, and he said, I finally understand how it's going to work. And I said, well, that's good, because we're going to start shooting tomorrow. But it was just so complex, and his next gig was T2.
Oh, wow.
And he called me from there, and he said Cranium Command was the perfect training for something as complex as Terminator 2. He said it's the same degree of complexity, and I really felt ready once I stepped onto this set. So
wow.
So it was totally intriguing, very complex effort. And back in those days, thank goodness I'm totally into computers now. I do all my concept paintings with a Wacom tablet and
nice.
Pushing pixels around instead of paint. But back in those days, everything was completely analog, so we had to hook up flatbed editing machines to each other so we could be showing multiple things during the edit. And it was pretty crazy.
I bet. Mike Scope has a question about one of the attractions that you worked on in the Magic Kingdom. Mike?
Jerry, I look at all your projects, and it's just amazing. I wish our readers could see the list. And as I'm going through the list, I'm thinking, which of these projects would they want me to ask you to talk about? And maybe it's a little selfish on my part, but the one that's really curious to me, and I've been going to Disney World since 1975, and when I first came across Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, the first thing I thought was, this is definitely out of the Disney box. So I'm really curious as to how that project came about and what you remember from that.
Really interesting. There's a number of people who have told me that it was in their list of favorites. And it's funny, when I was shooting the Rock and Roller Coaster with Aerosmith, they were talking about having just been on this ride. In fact, it was Joe Perry was saying, "Oh my God, we were on this ride. It was so cool and so scary. And my wife was grabbing my arm in the dark and stuff." And the sound engineer said, "Oh, that's you can blame Jerry for that. That's another another one of his shows." But it was really interesting. I think probably if I could just have Tinkerbell's pixie dust and magic and everything, I probably would have transplanted that whole effort into Disney MGM Studios, which has Tower of Terror and a bunch of sort of PG-rated things. In hindsight, I suppose where it existed in the Magic Kingdom was a little dicey, because I assume people weren't used to having something that was PG just because of it was playfully scary, dark humor, and by the way, everybody I cast in on screen and for voices, etc., were all comedians. It was all comic, but it was dark comedy, and it was the fun of being scared.
They had some great lines in that,
and we had a blast with that. But it was interesting because I was first invited to to come in and take a look at it and do storyboards and then direct the media for it. And then it was the thinking was that it would go be installed in the park, and I was used to following things through soup to nuts, beginning to end, all the way until the installation. But in that particular case, they said, you have to come down here and workshop it in the space too. We want that same sense of storytelling. So then I had a second phase where I got to actually go down, and in addition to just shooting the media, now go down and be in the field installing it, which was what I was used to on the other shows. And man, I just I remember it was so many layers of complexity and just so much fun to do, and the fact that we had binaural sound and sort of about every reach out and touch you get that you could imagine. We just made it such an innovative, fun ride to work on. And there's a group of people who saw it during that initial phase where it ran for several years and was very popular. I know now that they've done sort of a makeover where it's a kid-friendly version.
Let's not talk about that.
I have not seen it, but I just have talked to a number of people who really connected with that first show. And I think it was Newsweek or something that I remember reading a review that talked about it as being sort of hearkening back to like the Tingler, where they had the theater seats that would shock you in the dark, and just that fun sense of being scared, but in a fun sense.
Yep.
And it was just a treat having Kevin Pollak, Kathy Najimy, and even the guy that I got to do the voice of the worker that gets eaten above you in the catwalk was a guy named Jim Jackman, who's from the Groundlings Improv Theater.
Huh. Was Tyra Banks really in this?
Tyra Banks was in this, and that's kind of it's a fun trivia thing I ask people sometimes is sometimes instead of mentioning her name, I work from the other side, and I show them the video of the alien spokesmodel for the company that you see in the very first space when you walk in.
Uh-huh.
And I ask them, who is that? And most of them don't know, and the answer is Tyra Banks.
Wow.
It was just when she was arriving in sort of the supermodel arena, and she, of course, like everybody else that appears in the Alien Encounter show, she went through about 4.5 hours of makeup that morning and is green and has no hair. But was still an amazing alien supermodel.
I bet.
Hey, Jerry, maybe you're the person who can best answer this. When Alien Encounter first came out for a while, and I thought that it closed down a while, and we heard that it was too intense and that the attraction and the show had to be toned down a bit. Is that true, or was that just a rumor?
I am not being a spokesperson for Disney, and I'm not aware of the inside conversations that happened about it. But I sort of heard the same thing through the grapevine. So I've heard the same rumors you have. Put it that way. I think if it had its home at Disney MGM Studios, where you have things like Tower of Terror and other things that are intense, I think it would be still playing and perfectly fine. I think it's just.
I think you're right.
Sitting in the Magic Kingdom, where I think, and gosh, I remember when I was a kid, and my parents would just dump me and my friends in the Magic Kingdom and assume that no matter where you step foot, it's all going to be friendly and safe. The fact that there was a ride that had an age warning, like this is not for young kids, it may be too scary. But still, if a parent just lets a kid run, they're likely to run onto it, I suppose. So I'm sure that some of that did arise, although, as I say, I don't know of any sort of official mandate that came down from anyone, but I'm assuming that that's fairly correct.
Now, Jerry, many of our listeners know that I am not a fan of the dinosaur attraction. In fact, I am scared of the dinosaur attraction. And I just have one question for you. Couldn't you have just sent them back to way before the meteor hit and nothing happens? It would have been far more entertaining, in my opinion.
Well, in that particular case, of all the ones that are represented there, in that particular case, I was involved with only the media. in most of them, I was involved with, like with Back to Neverland, I brought in core concept, worked the story, co-wrote, and directed live and animation and everything. In the case of Dinosaur, there were, it's a massive thing where, they were building the animatronic part and had the basic storyline that coexisted on already, a separate track from what I was doing. And so my job was to say, okay, I'm locked into that storyline, so I'm not contributing to that, but I am guiding how the media would let the story unfold. So, with Wally Langham and Felicia Rashad, and how that, like, I could go ahead and creatively shape that. But once you left that media area and you were on the ride, I was not involved with any of that. But I must say that that's also sadly one of the shows that I haven't been on in its final form. Everything else I've taken it all the way through to the final mix and everything, and taken test audiences through. But Dinosaur was one of the projects where I was doing that in conjunction with some other things. And when I finished the media and finished the mix on this side, I sent it and it was put in the field, and I've not yet gotten to go through the the animatronic part.
Yeah,
but
you're not missing much. It's all right. You don't worry about it. Don't subject yourself to that.
But it was I enjoyed Felicia and Wally, and the fact that the dinosaur came back and was roaming around. So at least those parts I had fun with, and the rest of it I'm not sure what we've got. So until I go on it. So
we've got time probably for just one more question here, Jerry. And one of them I really wish you directed "Oh Canada," which is the new Canada film in the Canada Pavilion. But I have to really commend you. This was a really good film that you've come out with. It's entertaining. I think it really does a great job of blending entertainment with information, and the song in it with the new rendition of it, wonderfully done. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the "Oh Canada" film, because it's really a wonderful job?
Well, I must say that that the total treat for me was getting to work with Martin Short again, because I'd worked with him the first time on Cinemagique in Paris, and that's 1,100 seat theater, big screen, like every film format you can imagine, and in-room effects plus movie things, and we Martin went on quite a big adventure on that project, and we put him through many things, including with exploding pyrotechnics out in the middle of the desert during 107-degree weather, and then immersing him 18 feet into a water tank for other times. And he was just a trooper. So when I was invited to come work with him again on "Oh Canada," it was just that was to me like a great big draw to get a reason to come in and get involved again. And he just brought a whole sense of fun to it, and of course, being a Canadian, felt invested in making it a great story, and very much a lot of personality driving it. So it wasn't just information. And so our main hope was to give a real feeling of people and heart and culture, and not so much data driven. So it would feel very much like you're getting to know people and getting to know who they are. And Martin, being a host, instead of just hearing a narrator's voice, really helped that become real. I think he deserves a hell of a lot of credit.
Oh yeah, and I love the Celine Dion line is just awesome. Every time I've seen the show, it always gets a huge laugh from the audience. So that was wonderful. Awesome. Well, Jerry, you've got so much that's here, and certainly we're going to try to get you back on here, because there's so much to talk about here, and I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to us about some of these wonderful attractions. So thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Matt and Mike. I had a great time, and I'd love to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, that's it for us today. Don't forget that this episode of WDW Today has been sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And, while after a long day at the park, seeing all the attractions that Jerry's worked on, because a lot of them are still there, you're going to need a nice place to go to. Maybe your own private pool to go relax in and reminisce about some of the great lines that you saw in the attractions that Jerry worked on. You can do that in All-Star Vacation Home. They're available online at www.allstarvacationhomes.com. you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, visit the WDW Today website at WDWtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.